call to order the meeting of the Maryland Environmental Services Board of Directors Audit Committee meeting. My name is Molly Jones. I'm the Audit Committee Chair. Our first agenda item is approval of the minutes for May 22nd, 2025. Committee members, do you have any changes, edits to the meeting minutes as presented? Hearing none, the meeting minutes stand as presented to the board. Our next agenda item is the S&B and Company FY 2025 audit. And for that, I call upon Ms. Monique Booker.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I know we met earlier in the year just based on the planning for the audit. And we have concluded the audit for the financial statements. So this presentation will just walk through those results, our audit approach, and provide you opportunity to ask any questions as it relates to the audit. On the next slide, just to introduce the team, again, I'm Monique Booker. I served as the engagement partner this year. We have several partners involved. You'll see Grace Smith, he continued to serve as our client service partner, and Pamela Gray was also an additional partner resource that reviewed documents and various items as it relates to the audit. And then we had Mina, who was our audit supervisor, worked very closely with Maria and Kayla and team and executing the audit plan. And then we also have an IT manager that was part of our audit process as well, Julie Paris. So that's the leadership team that served to complete the various services that we were engaged to do. So on the next slide, this is just a reminder, for the committee, what were those services that we were engaged for? Of course, that includes the financial statement audit for MES, that includes the Midshore Fund, as well as OPEB, the other post-employment benefit plan that we'll talk about those results today. Our services also includes the single audit or the compliance audit. That has not been concluded. That is in process, but I also just take this opportunity to update you as a committee. The single audit, those compliance requirements that come from the federal government, the Office of Management and Budget. And probably not surprised to hear that that supplement for 2025 has not been finalized as of yet. So we're expected to wait until that supplement is final in order to complete any compliance testing. There is a draft report that's available, or compliance supplement, so we're performing testing in accordance with that draft. However, we really don't know when that will be finalized. So that's something we're just going to keep aware and keep you in the loop, update you as we go along for that. And then we also have a schedule of indirect costs that we will be completing as well. And I think it's just important to know that we really are a resource throughout the year. We know the importance of the year-end audit and being able to meet your timing, but as transactions, items occur during the year, SB and Company is a resource to you. So our results, we will issue an unqualified opinion. So that's the best opinion that we can issue under standards that would cover MES, Midshore, and the OPEB financial statements. Again, I noted the single audit is in process. We'll talk about our risk-based audit approach and give you the results of that internal control review, but know that there weren't any material weaknesses that was identified as part of that process. And although our audit is not a fraud audit, because it is a risk-based approach, so we're looking at processes, internal controls, if we become aware of instances of fraud or illegal acts, we would bring that to this committee's attention as soon as we're aware. But no such discoveries or items that we became aware of that we would need to share. And also, I think important for you to know, as part of an audit and also being back after 5 years, there's a lot of questions. We ask for a lot of documents, but at no point in time did we feel we weren't given the information that we requested. So we didn't consider that to be any scope limitations, if you will. So I think that's important for you to know. And then on the next slide, just briefly here, I spoke about this slide when we had our kind of entrance meeting with the committee, but again, it is a risk-based audit approach. So we started at the top of that funnel with our preliminary testing and meeting with various process owners and making a lot of selections for transactions and testing to see whether or not those were in accordance with the established policies and procedures that you had in place. So today we'll be able to give you the results of that testing. And then based on that internal control understanding, we finalized our risk assessment, identified the key audit risk, and designed appropriate procedures around those risks in order to be able to conclude on those balances. And now we're at the bottom of our funnel, gas compliance and reporting, where we're now reporting out to governance on the results of these procedures. So on the next slide. So we look at the internal control environment in two phases. So this phase is a 5-pronged approach covering control environment, risk assessment, control activities, information communication, and monitoring. And you'll see various bullets included within each of those sections. And those are the ways in which we ultimately evaluated the controlled environment. So looking at your policies and procedures that are in place, reading the board minutes and committee minutes to see what types of items the committee discuss, what types of issues or concerns that may be addressed, by governance. As part of our, what we call walkthroughs, when we're talking to process owners and understanding, what they're reviewing, who's preparing, who's reviewing, those types of questions and queries and information provides us to ultimately give you our assessment of how we believe that controlled environment is working for MES. Is it effective? Are you able to get the information from the systems that you have in place? I mentioned before, Julie Paris was our audit manager, so she had an opportunity to meet with IT. We're not doing detailed testing from an information technology perspective, but we are looking for policies and procedures that are in place as it relates to your IT infrastructure. So making sure, that some of the best practices are being considered internally by your information technology group as you're establishing policies and updating those policies. And again, monitoring, looking at segregation of duties. These are all areas that we looked at as part of the fiscal year 25 audit, and we deemed based on our testing for those to be effective. So that's kind of our high level review of the overall control environment. And then if you go to the next slide, this is where we start to say, what are some of those very direct processes that impact the financial statements? So you'll have your treasury process as it impacts, your cash reconciliation, your investment policy, investment, recording, making sure that reconciliation process is happening. Your estimation process as it relates to the collectability of your billings that are out there for the various charges, those receivables that might be existing as of year end, that would be a significant estimation. And then you would also have your landfill closure, post-closure costs. That's an estimate that's included in the financial statements. So for each of those significant estimates, again, we have to understand what's management's process in coming up with that estimate, us testing the reasonableness of that, to ultimately conclude that that's an acceptable accounting within the financial statements. Your financial reporting, here we are focused on the year-end financial reporting, but, meeting a lot with Maria, Kayla, what's that year-end close process? Who's reviewing the results? How are journal entries being posted and tracked within your accounting system? We look at your expenditure process, looking at that approval, the disbursement, right? Do we have all the appropriate items in place in accordance with your policy in order to record and disperse transactions? Credit card, we know that there are transactions happening, from that electronic perspective. We find there that risk becomes the monitoring, who's approving and monitoring those transactions. So these are all functions within each of these processes that we evaluated as part of the audit process. Yes.
So at the end, you have effective, that's the rating for each. right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep,
right.
so for each, so the options, if you will, would have been not operating, it's not effective. Whether we found exceptions and we then have a recommendation or area for improvement, or based on our testing, based on the process itself and establishing risk and looking at gaps, if any. Assuming all of those were met, then we say it's an effective. So we believe the process you have in place, as designed is appropriate, and then based on our testing, we found that it was operating. On the next slide, you'll see the remaining key processes. So again, we're looking at your payroll process, and you see those various functions there, from hiring, approving salary or increases. That also include the bonus process was included within that payroll function, looking at your revenue, focusing quite a bit on the billing for charges function within MES, and understanding whether or not those are billed timely, are they in accordance with contracts, that sort of risk that we want to make sure are being addressed, fixed assets for any significant additions and or disposals that may have happened during the year. And then you have your compliance piece, and that's specifically related to the grant compliance, the federal compliance that we spoke about. So you'll see there, we really haven't concluded because that single audit, that compliance process or testing is still in process. And then your information technology, these are areas that Julie Paris discussed and looked at appropriate policy that you had in place or when it was last updated as it relates to to the service. So again, based on our testing and results, we found that those processes were effective. And once we do complete the compliance testing, we will report out on that as well. So that covers our processes, kind of the risk-based audit approach. If you go to the next slide, these were just some of those significant risks when we started the process. And what did we identify initially in our risk assessment as areas that we needed to just make sure we understood what was in place. We talk about cash and investments. We know from a fraud, liquidity perspective that the risk associated there. Again, your accounts receivable, your unbilled project cost, those assets, making sure we understand that methodology. So you'll see various items listed here that were considered as part of our risk assessment process. And then if you go to the next slide, as we kind of continue through the process, you'll see, kind of those remaining risks that we design procedures around. But something else that went into our risk assessment process relates to new accounting pronouncements. So which of these had an impact on fiscal year 25 and also impact the risk and impact some of the policies that you might have in place. And you'll see GASB 101 and 102 were the two pronouncements that's effective for the service during current year. We have some upcoming ones in fiscal year 26 and 27. Not expecting those to have significant impact on MES, but that's something that we will meet with management, talk, and make sure you're prepared for that implementation. But when we go back to GASB 101, which we'll look at the impact of that as well on some upcoming slides and the numbers, but that was your compensated absence pronouncement, and that did have a significant impact on the service this year. So in the past, you've always accrued for vacation cost. But what this pronouncement required is for management to consider sick leave. So sick leave that is accumulated and able to carry over from one year to the next, although it may not be paid out at termination, it is usable, over a period of time. So management needed to go in and evaluate that sick leave balance and what was more likely to be used, and quantify that. And you'll see it was a little over $4 million impact on compensated absences this year.
So, there was a question raised. So compensated absences, is based on your experience, the past history, what the employees earned the sick leave and what they have taken. So based on that estimation, we have to, book that it is very likely, that out of what is the sick leave liability, which proportion will be taken percentage of. So it is a liability, but it is offset because most of the entities has to book the compensated absences as an expense and incur the liability because they're going to be paid in the future. MES is different because this compensated liabilities, like the sick leave paid, it becomes part of our fringe benefit rate setting. So it will impact the future rates, but it does not have any impact this year. And it does not is not considered as an expense because we have offsetting revenues in the future. So we book a large liability, if there was no offsetting revenues in the future, it will be a big hit in this year. So that's why for MES, we booked according to GASB 101, but for the exact same amount, we have offsetting asset that is future receivables. So that's why it's not affecting our net earnings.
And when you say that it's based on an estimate of what employees will use, is that in the next fiscal year or over some other period of time?
So we have both, we have the current in the next fiscal year for the calculations and what is the overall liability. So if we have sick leave for say $6 million, then on the books, we based on that estimation, we say about 4 million will be used over years. So we adjusted that, and the only way you can come up with that factor is look at the last few years' history, and we determined that. So that was a point of discussion with the auditors for a while, and we had a calculator, we provided the statistics, and this is the biggest impact for most of the entities, but we did thorough job on it, and as I say, we have an offsetting revenues in the future, so it does not affect our net earnings.
Are all governmental entities required to do this now?
Yes, yep, so this is a new requirement, having significant impact for many organizations. And a lot of questions I got was, well, but we don't pay it out, but because it's accruable, and these individuals have proven in the past they've used sick leave, so there's a reasonable expectation that they will continue to use it on a go-forward basis. So therefore, government should be accruing for that liability, as they go along, so.
And every year, the calculation will change because we'll have one additional year of experience. So.
Yeah, and how far back do you go in looking at that? Is it going to be some rolling period of time, or do you just go back for however long?
And
I
it
think
really is up to
5 years.
Yeah, it's
and
up to
then it'll be
management.
rolling period.
At least GASB did not put that within the pronouncement to say exactly how management comes up. But what we've seen as MES did at least 3 years this first year. So you're right. So now they'll probably add on to it and maybe just look at it over a 5-year period as their best estimate of what it will be on a go-forward basis. And I'll point out the 2 line items where those amounts are recorded. In GASB 102, that's just management determining if there are any additional disclosures other than, what they've disclosed in the past that they feel need to be disclosed to make a reader aware of any significant risk that might be, considered and could have an impact on MES. We did not have any additional disclosures related to that. So on the next slide, those were kind of our final risk areas that we identified, and we created specific work programs or work steps around addressing each of these areas. as it relates to, say, accounting for the right of use assets, so those leases, this was a pronouncement several years ago that were implemented, but we want to make sure, that we're, making sure that that's updated for any new commitments that the service might have. Completeness of those accounts payables and accrued expenses, so that's where the compensated absences piece that we spoke about, come in. So we've designed our procedures to make sure that we address these specific, audit risk. So then if we go to the next slide and we start to, and the next slide after this, where we start to get into the actual financial numbers. So you'll see we have several slides. This first one will relate to, Maryland Environmental Services, the main service, fund, if you will, where you see your assets listed here. You see an increase in cash and a decrease in investments, kind of a timing, item there as of June 30, 25. But when you look at that together, still strong balance and compared to prior year. And we've talked about the collectability of receivables. So you do see that increase in your accounts receivable, from one year to the next, but you'll also see an increase in your revenue as well, contributing to that. So not necessarily seeing, a significant aging of those receivables, but just the timing of billings, and collections, at year end. And there is an allowance of 500,000 included on the balance that was deemed, reasonable for year end. And then when you get into some of your non-current assets, your due from project participants, that's the other asset, if you will, where the compensated accrual that we were talking about, that's where the offset goes for those future, liabilities that will ultimately be billed through your indirect cost rates. That gets included in this due from project participant. So for example, your net pension liability, right? That's an amount that comes from the state each year. Ultimately, those types of costs coming through compensation, coming through other costs of the service, ultimately are reimbursed by the participants. So when you see restated 2024, that's one of the accounts that were restated. So what the GASB 101 accounting requirement had in place is you had to accrue that back to the earliest period presented in your financial statements. So because MES presents 2 fiscal years, they needed to restate that prior year so that you're comparing apples to apples. So your 2024 numbers were restated, which that due from project participant is different. So if you were to look at the statements that were issued in 2024, you will see that that number has increased. Related to GASB 101 implementation. And we'll see, the other side of that on the liability side. Something else I would just highlight, you see there's a note receivable on MES that relates to the agreement with Midshore in the purchasing of a particular piece of equipment that was needed. So you'll see an offsetting liability on Midshore. So that was a transaction that happened during the year, and that is recorded in the financials and disclosed in the footnotes to the financial statements as well. And you'll see your, non-current assets have increased, but primarily related to your fixed asset activity, capital activity there with your machinery and equipment that was part of our testing for property and equipment. So you have total assets there that has increased from 2024 to 2025. And then if we go to the next slide, we'll see the liability and net position portion of the financial statements for MES. So again, accounts payable, accrued expenses, always just timing of invoices, paying for those invoices. We perform what we call cutoff testing to make sure that those liabilities are recorded in the correct period from an audit perspective. And then you'll see compensated absences, and you'll see that under the current and the non-current portion. So again, management's estimate of what sick leave would be used within the next year versus years thereafter. And you'll see that those are comparative because your 2024 numbers were restated, right? So compensated absence accrual, that estimate or that calculation was performed for 24 and 25. So you have your current portion of about 5 million, and then you have your non-current portion there. Again, similar balances, 4.7 versus 4.8 for both of those years. Which again, if you were to, and I'm sorry, and that compensated absences is sick leave as well as vacation leave. We combined the two. But if you were to compare that to your 2024 numbers, you will see that those have increased because of this, this restatement. Okay, so total liabilities, you do have a slight increase there, again, mainly due to the timing of billings and payments and some of your advances and all that's being collected from participants that will be recognized in a future period. But ultimately, you had an increase in your net position. You'll see from 30.7 to 31.9 for the year. And we'll be able to see what generated that increase on the next slide. So here on the next slide, we have our operating total revenue and expenses for the year. You'll see your total charges for services. You'll see an increase there. So increased projects, increased billing that MES was able to have for the fiscal year. But you'll also see that that contributed to an increase in costs as well, primarily in your salaries, benefits, and some of those contractual services. You see some increases there. Again, I think reflective of the increase in your operating revenue above. And then we have your non-operating revenue and expenses. Your grant activity is recorded there, and then you'll see the market activity from your investment earnings as well for the year. And that ultimately gave you an increase in your net position of 1.2 million this year compared to the 600, almost $700,000 increase in prior year. So a more favorable year for the service with that increase in revenue. So then on the next slide, we start getting into the Midshore financial statement. So showing you those assets and liabilities for Midshore. Again, you see that due from MES with the activity that's occurring on behalf of Midshore there. So pretty consistent with what it has been, in the past. And then I noted the note receivable on MES financial statements as it related to, again, equipment purchase. You'll see that liability is noted here on these statements as a lease payable. There's a current and a non-current portion. So again, just based on the payment terms, you have that receivable and payable on both sets of financial statements, and there is a footnote disclosure that has been added to describe the terms there. And then, of course, we have our bonds, accounting, seeing decrease there as principal payments are happening, throughout the year. The landfill, so one of the estimates I pointed out before was the landfill closure, post-closure for cell 1 and 2. We also understand that cell 3, it's there's construction in process there, so we expect to see some differences in the upcoming year related to that.
Just, there's a cell 2 construction, which is extended. Cell 3, we are not doing construction right now.
Okay.
I mean, cell 1 and 5 constructions are going there, so.
Gotcha. Okay, sorry.
But it is,
There.
it
Yeah,
is
I knew there
expanded,
was-
because they're
there's some
recorded, so I just want to make
expansion.
sure that, it's a cell 1 and 5 that is being constructed.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, so you'll see your net position still, strong for Midshore. And on the next slide, you'll see again what's contributing to that increase. You have some increase in your charges for services there as well from 24 compared to 25. And some of your operating expenses there, actually a slight decrease in those costs, but still giving you an increase in your change in position, pretty consistent with the prior year as it relates to the Midshore activity. So increasing that total net position at year end. And then the last numbers we have relates to the OPEB, the other post-employment benefit plan. So this trust plan here showing the fair value of those investments as of year end, those fiduciary assets that are being held for participants. So you see an increase in that valuation at year end as well for that OPEB plan. So that plan is in a net asset position. So you'll see the asset value has increased to 9.6, over the 8.5 in prior year. And then if you go to the next slide, you see that ultimate impact on that, how you get to that increase in that position. So you do have a decrease in employer contributions. There was an additional contribution during 2024 that was not made in 2025 there. So you see some differential there, but then you see your total additions as well, investment income, slight decrease there for the year, giving you a total change of the 1.2 million, getting you up to that new net position increase of the 9.7 for the year. And again, there's additional disclosure within the financial statements, specifically as it relates to the OPEB plan, pretty lengthy disclosure that's required under, the GASB accounting requirements. So there's additional disclosure there. So that really discussed just the results from a financial statement standpoint. If there's any other questions on the numbers, I could address any of those questions before I go to the last portion of the presentation. Okay, so if we go a couple of slides forward to our required communications, this is really just the communications, we're required to have to governance, we being the independent auditors, just walking you through our audit approach, which is how we ultimately issue an opinion. That's our responsibility to issue an opinion on the financial statements. It's ultimately management's responsibility to accept and understand the information that's included in the financial statements. The significant accounting policies, we look at that as part of our audit process. Those are summarized within the footnotes to the financial statements. Again, the only, I would say, accounting policy change this year related to 101 with the sick leave. So you'll see there's additional disclosure related to that sick leave accounting policy that was adopted in order to, now accrue that information in the financials or that estimated payout. We look at, judgments, right? So we talk about those estimates that management make. Now auditors are coming in and judging whether those estimates are reasonable or not. Excuse me. And then you'll see the last item on this page relates to audit adjustments. So, as part of our process, questions, there could be errors that we find from an accounting perspective and propose adjustments within the financial statements. I would say that there weren't any what we would call bookkeeping or errors found, as part of that process. We may have had classification items that we proposed and, included within the financial statements. But there weren't any errors or adjustments that were proposed that needed to be made. So that just goes to the quality of that year-end close process that the service has in place. So if you go to the next slide, we talked about fraud, illegal acts, not our main focus from an audit perspective, but we would bring that to your attention if we became aware of any. There are none, no material weaknesses in the internal controls. Number 7, there are other information containing the audited financial statements. If MES were to put out, say, an annual report or some other document that actually incorporates the full set of audited statements, we ask that, or standards at least require us to get the full document so that we can read it and make sure that there aren't any inconsistencies, say, earlier in the document that are inconsistent with the audited financial statement. So that's just a requirement that we have under standards. We ask that we will be able to read that before it's made public. We're not aware of any such document that we've had to do that as of yet. No disagreements with management that we would need to bring to your attention. weren't any difficulties in executing the audit. MES was well prepared, and we were able to, again, obtain the items that we needed, the appropriate, information so that we were able to complete our testing. We do have, an annual acceptance process that we go through, so that includes us looking at conflict of interest as well from an independence perspective. But if we had any major issues that were discussed before we could conclude on that acceptance, we just think that's something that we should make governance aware of, and we didn't have any such items, this year. The next slide.
Ms. Booker, we do an annual report to the Governor and General Assembly. It's due in December, so, and we do put the audit in the back of them, so.
So I would expect it, and I think we have in the past, we would just get a copy of that so that we can just simply read through that.
So, timeframe for your review, like if 2 weeks,
Yeah, I was gonna say a week.
a week or 2 weeks?
Yeah, it's not a heavy, lift that
Make
we
sure,
need to
make sure
do,
Mr.
just.
Sell gets it to you.
Okay, thank you. And then the last items here, so one of the last things we will do once we have approval to finalize the financial statements, we get a written representation from management here, again, accepting responsibility for the financial statements. Not aware of any consultation with other accountants or other auditors on any particular transaction and the way in which MES is accounting for a transaction. I noted as part of our acceptance process this year, we look at independence. We have our conflict of interest process that we follow within SB & Company. And just from an awareness perspective, of course, the financial statements are an attest service, but us assisting with the preparation of the footnotes, ultimately reading through those items and providing any additional disclosures there. When we prepare the schedule of indirect costs, those are considered non-attest services. So we just have to make you aware of those. And that really concludes my presentation. We've talked about fraud and our responsibility. And on the very last slide is just our contact information as well. So if there are additional questions or items that, that you want to be able to discuss or get clarity on, our information is there for you to easily reach out. So I'll turn it back over to you, Chair. That concludes my presentation.
I would like to make a couple of comments, if I may.
Go
So,
ahead, Mr. Patel.
Monique mentioned SB & Company, where our auditors 5 or 6 years ago, and then we had RSM. State put out the contract for the statewide audit services. So we've been communicating with the state for almost a year. I think it started, last year in 2024 end, and we wanted to be part of the state contract. So congratulations, SB & Company was selected as a state auditors also. So we are just piggybacking on that because we were in communication with the state that we want to be part of the state audit contract. So the contract is for 5 years. Even though 6 years ago, SB & Company audited us, MES has changed. We have grown significantly, the revenues, the project, and we have even a new ERP system, which is Workday, and their IT specialists, did review all that. So I really want to thank Monique and her team. They did a thorough review of it and went back through everything all over again, a lot of samples and all that. So I really thank Monique and her team. Also, because it was the first year for them and the scope was changed significantly because of our growth, I want to thank MES finance team and also all the departments. Almost all departments were affected, from this testing because they just did it thoroughly from A to Z. So I want to thank all of them. And as Monique mentioned, Maria and Kayla were our key contact in finance, and we responded quickly. And they were given a strict deadline for the audit. And thank you very much for completing that on time.
Yep, no, you're welcome. Thank you. Appreciate that, Ham. No, it's been a pleasure to work with your group. Really was.
Thank you, Ms. Booker. Committee members or board members, any questions for Ms. Booker and team?
I have a question.
Okay.
Given that the single audit is not complete yet, can this financial audit be deemed completed for purposes? Because the board has to take other actions.
It can. So, excuse me. But yes, the financial statements can be finalized, issued as final. We will issue the single audit report as a separate report. So the opinion that's included in the financial statements will also be part of that single audit. And then we have the 2 additional opinions that would be completed upon the testing. So you are able to complete that.
Okay, thank you.
Hearing no questions, thank you, Ms. Booker.
Thank you. You guys enjoy the rest of your meeting.
I'm going to stay.
Unless you need, if you need.
No.
Our next agenda item is the internal audit report, and for that I call upon Ms. Vincent Condra.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning.
Mm,
So for today, we're gonna go over the provide you internal audit updates. We're gonna talk about risk assessment and talk about the billable project activity. So the first thing we're gonna talk about is audits in progress. So the Poplar Island Contract Management Review, that is in the reporting phase. And just for this purpose, because it's been a long time that we talked about this, want to touch on the scope for these 3. So the Poplar Island, the scope is to review the effectiveness of MES role in managing the contracts associated with the Poplar Island project. We looked at budget management, invoice tracking, contractors, reporting and contract compliance. So for the second one, Midshore 2 Site Management Review, we're in the testing phase. And the scope of this audit is to review the site administration, which includes maintenance, procurement, inventory, and staff allocation to ensure compliance to the MOU. The third one is the review of the retiree medical reimbursement plan. This is in the planning phase. This is an unplanned audit requested by the executive director. And the scope is to ensure adequate controls are in place to mitigate the risks associated with the plan, and best practices are being utilized in the administration process. These other audits that are in progress, they're all in the planning phase. The planning memo was not submitted as of yet, so we haven't determined the scope, but this is just to say these are in the next line. We're in the preliminary phase of the planning. So for the upcoming for fiscal 26, these are the scheduled audits that we have. I know that you guys have seen it before, but wanted to bring it forth to say, these are the 4. I know that we have resources to get this done, and we're doing other projects in MES, but these are the ones that we have scheduled for the rest of the fiscal year.
Ms. Condra,
Yes.
the review of marketing contract management process, what does that entail?
So this is dealing with EO, with their marketing,
Leaf growth.
Leaf Grow, and any other revenues that we have from recyclables, yeah. So I just want to touch the 12006. This should come off because we did this in a special investigation and it was reported. So that should have came off. All right, next slide. So I want to announce that we have a new staff. This is Mr. Ryan Dowdle. He is our new lead internal audit specialist. As you can see, he's an internal audit professional with nearly a decade of experience in the private sector, specifically within financial institutions. So it's going to be new for him because we're basically operational. So it's going to be a learning curve for him, but he's up for the challenge. His previous roles were, he was an internal audit manager at T. Rowe Price and a senior auditor at PNC Bank. He led the enterprise-wide audits, system implementations, and contributed to the development and refinement of audit methodologies. Outside of his professional career work, Ryan serves as a president and director of the Fells Prospect Community Association in Upper Fells Point, Baltimore, and he's originally from Ohio. He has since been a dedicated Orioles fan, so we don't have to hate on him. So
It's football season. Where did you stand there?
I don't know. We'll have to, you know, catch him by the water cooler. So it has been 22 days since he started MES, and he has hit the ground running by continuing the development of the audit plan, developing the finding tracker that we started, and he's starting his first audit, and it's in the preliminary stage, and that's the safety and communication process audit. So want to welcome him, and he's also going to be my stand-in just in case I can't make an audit committee. So at some point he'll be in front of all you guys. So with the new staff, and we have an updated internal audit org chart, and as you see, after his 6 months, the I guess expectation is that the auditors would report to him, and then he reports to me. Any questions? All right. So it's this time again. It's time for our risk assessment. So we can come up with our FY27 and FY28 audit plan. With this process, we are looking to start this the ending of October, early November, where we meet with the executive team. We perform surveys. We analyze the data, and that the data is like spend, revenue, HR data, and then we assess the risk based on all of the the process we have gone these 3 process. What we then do is compile the report and then present it to the executive leaders and the board. And our expectations at May 2026 board meeting, we should have this presented to the board. Questions? All right, none. Nice. So the exciting part, building billable project activities. So I want to report out what we have been doing for the MDEM project. It was slated to end in September. It has extended to December, the ending of December, and from May 2025 to September 2025, our hours is 660. And our billable revenue, which includes the fringe and overhead benefits rates, is 38,361,000. So it's moving pretty well. Any questions?
Sandra, could you just briefly explain what this MD COVID closeout project is?
Sure. So for the MDEM, during COVID, they provided, FEMA provided assistance to different counties, right? And other companies, right? Hospitals and so forth. And they're obligated certain amounts. So what we're doing as an audit department, we're reviewing the invoices that they're required to send to confirm that the amount that they spend is accurate. There's no duplicate payments submitted in there, and it's clean, right? We're making sure whatever is in the invoice and the amount that they said that they spent, they actually spent. So what we do is we take out any discrepancies and then to the bottom line, then report saying, okay, they were obligated this much. They said they spent this much, but after the audit, this is how much it is, right? So it would reduce that obligated amount. Not the obligated, but the actual spend amount that they submitted.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So the next project that we have is the MDE Task 1 and Task 2 project. This does include procurement and looking at MDE's procurement and WIFA. And this is through the test group again. So the numbers that we have, we looked at April 2025 to September 2025. The hours spent on that is 340 hours, and the billable revenue for that, that includes the benefit, the overrate rates is 51,996 thousand. So the projected end date is the ending of December. However, they have provided us, requested that we do two more projects for their fiscal and grants department, looking at helping them close out some projects that are priority, and also helping them looking at doing a Six Sigma exercise again for those departments. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Committee members, board members, any questions for Ms. Condra? Hearing none. Thank you, Ms. Condra, for the presentation.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item is old new business. And I do believe Brendan Potts has a new business item that he'd like to add to the board meeting. And before he does that, real quick question to council. Does this have to be a motion to add something to the board meeting, next week's board meeting? To the agenda item, or Ms. Heller, can you just make the request?
I think it could just be a request.
Okay, all right, Ms. Potts, if you want to go ahead and just do a brief intro of what you want to add.
Sure, happy to, Ms. Joes, and thank you everybody for the time on this. And so I'll explain a little bit. So last month, during our regular board meeting, Dr. Glass was walking through the Workday capabilities that we now have, and staff's access to use those AI integrated tools to access a lot of HR related information, which I think is great. And it made me, think a little bit about what else we could be doing, to integrate more AI, more automation in the work at MES to, increase productivity and increase efficiency. So I had drafted a memo that I had shared with the board members last month, that would basically ask MES to conduct an audit. And I don't know if audit is the right word, because it's not a financial audit, in the sense that that this committee looks at. It's more of a review of operations at MES, within the different divisions, to understand what processes and opportunities exist for AI integration, and to increase efficiency through use of those tools. And within the memo, I outlined a process to do the audit, and then I also outlined some potential opportunities within each of the divisions. But the purpose of the memo was honestly to generate ideas, and not necessarily a prescriptive approach to how to do the audit. And in my work outside of MES, every day, I use AI constantly in my work, and we're highly encouraged to. And I, get regular trainings and updates on how these tools are advancing. And I personally think it's very exciting and a great opportunity for MES. And again, it's not a prescriptive memo per se on how to do the audit. It was my hope that the review could be done through vendors at a low cost to MES, but it will require some time. I'm sure there will be interviews and discussions with the different groups that would be needed to fully understand how this could work. And then additionally, the different providers of these services and products are different. They offer, the services are different, the quality of the products are different. So I would suggest and recommend that if we do move forward with that, we get input from multiple vendors to understand what the potential is. And the other thing is these tools are changing constantly every day. So it's something that I think we would want to refresh at a certain point as well. And I know that we currently use Microsoft, and they have a number of tools, and I assume that they would be welcoming and interested in the idea of coming in and doing such a review for MES. but that's the general idea. And Ms. Joes, I hadn't shared the memo with anyone else. So I don't know if it would be helpful to share the memo with the folks on this call on the committee today, or if there's any other additional detail or information that I could walk through.
I do have a question for council. This would require action from the board, so I would like to kind of suggest to bring it to the full board next week to discuss. And then Mr. Botts, you can kind of, forward it to the board members. I'm just
I
kind
can-
of figuring, how we proceed forward. We can add it to the agenda for discussion, but does this require action from the board to move forward if we decide to move forward with Mr. Brendan's suggestions, recommendations?
I think it would maybe require, I don't know how you would frame it exactly in what you're directing or requesting or recommending that the agency do. It seems like something that might need a little more discussion before it's formulated as a motion or a plan.
Right.
For something that the agency is gonna do.
So, Mr. Botts, are you okay with adding it to the agenda item for the board meeting, and we can discuss and then come up with action items?
Sure. Yeah, and I'd be happy to present and walk through it and answer questions and have discussion around it. And, it's my thinking that what the board would approve here initially is really not a plan. It's more of an ask for MES staff to
Mhm.
start such a review. And then I think based on where that goes, we would have a plan to then contemplate and discuss. But I would want to hear more from Dr. Glass and the other folks at leadership at MES about how this may unfold internally.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So, even talking like this, Mr. Boss was stimulated by talking about how our internal team over years and with pressure developed a bot just for our intranet. However, we do have Copilot turned on at the highest level possible for, for our license. And we have it turned on at a lower level for every single MES employee. Our current, and now just in the last 6 weeks, Copilot added ChatGPT as a side, and we can both work with Copilot on we can work with Copilot in just our intranet and with access to the web with ChatGPT. They've also added agents, and they continue to add agents. So for a specific type of work, you can use an agent for research. You can use an agent for ideation, brainstorming. You can use an agent for scheduling. So they have about, and those agents, those apps are being developed, every day. Then we have the Maryland, DoIT has created Maryland AI, MDAI. And so they have a monthly meeting, and they are starting a use catalog and sharing it across all of the agencies. And they repeat their theme of taking drudgery out of the lives of state employees. So DoIT has both Gemini, Gemini is turned on because the rest of the state, or most of the state agencies are with Google, conflict of interest excluded, right? And then there are some big agencies, not MES, but MDOT is Microsoft, right? So they have Copilot. And so the state is building a catalog of every type of process you can speed up with either Gemini or Copilot with said agents. And then we hosted, I did 3 things at WEFTech. I was searching for 3 contacts, and I walked the floor just for those 3 specific relationship building moments. One was PFAS and microplastics, and both for water treatment, and secondarily for biosolids, PFAS. And then the third was what are people talking about machine learning and AI in anything that we do in the water and wastewater industry, and if there's anyone that does something tangential. So, and when you meet these folks at WEFTEC, you know, they will literally fly in for the lead. And so Deputy and I met with a company called TeamSolve. I explained there's no procurement going on. But they and that they would have to go through a regular procurement process if they were interested. And so there are companies like TeamSolve. I've talked to others that have been at Mako and MML that are similar to what Mr. Boss is talking about. They will do things like suggest that any long-serving person. So before Hammett would ever decide to even think about retiring, we'd have Hammett start talking to a database. And now you can talk to them, right? Now Hammett could sit there and let them listen to him and just discuss parts of our financial structure. And then we could name it, the agent would just be Hammett Patel, everything you want to know about MES finance, right? And so they're talking about that even with water and wastewater with operations, because where's the valve, where's the pump, et cetera, et cetera. So I wrote these notes to say how we are doing a semblance of it. I've been subtly pushing, advising senior leaders, managing directors to think about how it applies in their areas. And Mr. Ford, to his credit, is one of the few that says, like, optical sorters at the MRFs. Optical sorters are now reaching higher levels with machine learning and AI, just built on top of the data. We have a new plant, Elk Neck wastewater treatment plant up in northeastern Maryland, in Cecil County, has AI built into the SCADA system. It just hasn't calibrated properly yet. It's sending out too many alarms. So all of our supervisory control and data acquisition technology that's in the water treatment plants and wastewater treatment plants, when they roll out now, when we get a new plant, they are building in AI. They're building in machine learning, and that helped with the apps. We bought a couple of years ago, we started with some extra funds buying tablets for all of our operators. All those tablets connected to the SCADA systems, they get the alarms anyway. This is how we don't have 3 shifts at any of our plants. And that's also being influenced, and they're learning. They're becoming learning mechanisms. So it's throughout everything, and it's a big race. I would just be careful on prescribing. So I'm happy to say, hey, let me just update the board, right, on a regular basis every month on everything we're finding. I wouldn't want to prescribe, go seek a procurement and find a corporation that will then dive through everything we do in every area and give us advice. Like I wouldn't suggest that. Oh, by the way, we just poached, I don't know how we get some of these folks. I don't know how we got the guy from T. Rowe Price, but whatever. We got a woman that is coming from Microsoft. She's joined the IT team, and she's going to give us a presentation. She worked on Copilot with Microsoft, and she's going to tell us some of the things we may not know about how we're using. She's got her scheduled. I just asked Mr. Powers to make sure I could be there, but it's in November. We're going to have her give a presentation on how we can enhance our capabilities. So I don't know where you all want to go. I'm happy to have an item and have a discussion and have the report shared and discuss it. But there's no reason to say we should just prescribe a procurement, because that's where we would go. If you're saying
I don't think that's what Mr. Brendan's prescribing. It's, I always see that as the board is the what we're asking you to do, and the how is up to your operational to figure out how to do it. So I think he's giving a big long-term picture of asking MES to, and correct me, Mr. Brendan, I'm just assuming, he's giving the what from the board as we would like to be, and you can present this, and how you figure it out is up to you and your team. Mr. Batts, am I correct?
I think that's right, Ms. Jones. That is right. And Dr. Glass, I'd be curious, because I am aware that Copilot and ChatGPT are constantly updating and adding features and tools. But are you all being trained on those and being updated from them regularly about how those tools could help MES internally. Because it moves very fast, right? And like the updates are constant, and it sounds like you have a new staff member coming in who used to work on Copilot who can give some sort of presentation on that, but I don't know if you're also getting regular training or updates from Microsoft on those tools, how to use them and where they may best fit inside the agency.
Not formal training, no, but we do have, she's already here and we already have a scheduled training with her. And what we've been doing is, and this happened this week, so mainly started with executive leadership getting the $30 per month subscription. We just added 10 more, so we're up to about 40. And I focused on hyper users of the basic level. So Mr. Powers gets a report. I say, Mr. Powers, who's actually using Copilot? Now, this isn't necessarily vetting whether they're using it for MES purposes. I'm assuming that hyper users that have 400 prompts in a month are using it to speed up their work. But I haven't queried or surveyed that. And so we're just opening it up for those hyper users that we know will, for their document creation, for their work products, for their spreadsheets, they're using it. So I think all of the state agencies are starting to do it at a more rapid pace from this. There are about 200 state employees on that monthly call. So anyway, but yeah, well, I'm happy to proceed and keep everyone updated.
Okay, sounds great. And obviously I have to be completely agnostic on the software or who who we ultimately end up using. And just kind of speak in generalities. But I will say that there are significant differences between these companies and how these products actually work.
It's thoughts, and we can add that to the next board meeting agenda and follow up in November as well with Dr. Glass and his team, if that's okay with you.
I think that would be great, and I can share a PDF with Ms. Fuller in advance of that meeting, so folks have a document to look at as well.
Thank you. Committee members, board members, any additional, Dr. Glass, any additional items to discuss?
Nope, not here, Madam Chair.
Hearing none, the meeting, the next MES Audit Committee meeting is in May 2026. Ms. Condra, is that correct? I don't know the exact date.
Is it, yeah, I don't know the exact date. I don't remember.
I couldn't find the date in May, but it's in May 2026, correct?
Yeah, correct.
It's a long ways away.
You can always add another one, Mr. Moss.
Is it on your cover?
It's not
Oh,
yours.
yeah.
I thought I had it. I don't have it with me.
It's usually on the 22nd or 23rd. It's like,
Have you published it anywhere?
Yeah, it's on our website. It's the week before the May board meeting.
Okay.
All right. Hearing no more items, the meeting is now adjourned.